Welcome to the Find Your Best Future podcast. This is the podcast that helps international families make great decisions when it comes to choosing university courses.
Well, today we are very fortunate to have Sara Roberts join us. She is a Senior International Recruitment Officer for South Asia and the Middle East at Imperial College London. And very appropriately, I'm located in the Middle East today. I know regular listeners will know that I am normally in Vienna, Austria, but today I'm actually in my hotel room in Abu Dhabi. So welcome, Sara. Perhaps you'd like to say a little bit about yourself and a very quick intro to your university.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Hi, everybody. And as Jeremy just introduced, yes, I'm one of the Senior International Recruitment Officers at Imperial College for South Asia and the Middle East, part of a fantastic international team here. And I get to spend my time supporting students, parents, counsellors kind of navigate the application process of applying to a university like Imperial College London. Really excited to talk a little bit more about Imperial. A very brief introduction to the university. So we were founded in 1907 and we are a very unique university in the UK. We are a specialist institution offering programs in natural sciences, engineering, medicine, and we now have our first undergraduate business program, which is really, really exciting. But we are unique because we do focus in the STEM B area, and that is what our bread and butter really is in terms of the courses that we offer.
Now, I know from talking to many university recruitment, university admissions officers that they are always very proud of the institution that they work for and very positive and very engaged. But what is it that you personally love most about Imperial?
I mean, it's such a big question, and with a university like Imperial, there are so many amazing things about being part of that community. But I'm honestly so in awe of all the research and engagement that the students are undertaking, even from an undergraduate level, the way that students approach things, the community, that STEM community that is fostered on campus really is so inspiring, and it's such a fantastic community to be a part of.
Can you describe the university's location? Like, where is it?
Yes, so London's a huge city, and it is great to kind of try and imagine where it is. So our campus is in South Kensington, so we're in the southwest part of London. Our campus is on the border of Hyde Park. We're nestled in between the Royal Albert Hall, where all Imperial students will graduate from, next to the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, the Victoria and Albert. So a really fantastic area for students to kind of start that life in London, potentially if they're coming from elsewhere, and a really beautiful part of London to be a student in.
And knowing London well, I assume it's well connected with transport, public transport.
Absolutely. In terms of bus links, we have a range of different bus connections outside the campus. We're positioned on 2 tube lines, so the Piccadilly line and the District line. So no matter where you want to get to, if you want to go to the airport or into central London, it's really well connected for those areas.
Now, this is going to seem like a very British question, but what's the weather like?
I love that question. I'd love to show the audience now that the sky is blue right now, but it is changeable. And I think, especially when I'm speaking to students in South Asia and the Middle East, it is colder in many parts, and it is more changeable. So always advising students to bring layers, bring a waterproof layer. But yeah, it is that definitely an adjustment for students coming from various countries around the world.
This is one of the things that I talk to my high school students about, because some of them actually have no clue what British weather is like. And I jokingly say Britain is not a tropical island, so get yourself a warm, waterproof coat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Imperial College London, I know, is one of the state-run, government-funded universities, which is sort of pretty much standard, I think, for almost all universities in the UK. I assume then it's a not-for-profit organisation.
That's correct.
Yeah, good. Okay, shall we talk a little bit about the facilities? Because this is really going to interest our listeners. Perhaps you could talk about the teaching spaces, the libraries, the laboratories, all those sort of things.
Absolutely. So on our main campus, which is where students will be spending 75 to 90% of their time, depending on how hard they want to study. But in terms of the facilities, it really is world leading. And because we are STEM specialists, that is where our facilities really have been developed to industry standard. We have a 4-story carbon capture plant on campus for our chemical engineers. We have flight simulators for our aeronautics students. We have wave machines, wind turbines, really encouraging students to make the most of the workshop space, metalwork, woodwork facilities for prototyping, aerodrome for building, testing drones. We are wanting our students to take what they are learning in a lecture or a seminar and really implement that into the real world. And I think that's such a great thing, that from the first year at Imperial, you will be doing that project work and translating what you've learned into reality. So our facilities are geared for students to be moving into that realm from the first year.
Now, I think it's worth pointing out it's very important for students to maintain a healthy work-life balance. And British universities have a huge array of clubs and societies and hobbies in the sort of the non-academic area to allow students that little bit of sort of downtime, relaxed time, fun time, whatever you like to call it. Can you tell us what Imperial has to offer in that area?
I'm so glad you asked this question because, being a world leading institution, we do get a lot of questions around the academics, and students work incredibly hard to make sure that they can get into an institution like Imperial. And one of the questions that I do get asked on the road is, do Imperial students actually have fun? And it makes me laugh every time, because our students really know how to balance and enjoy life at at university, and it's such a crucial part of university life. And I'm so proud to say we have over 375 clubs and societies, over 90 sports societies, everything from American football, football leagues, cricket, cheerleading, windsurfing, students getting their pilot's license. The facilities, whether we have partnerships with the Royal College of Music, music rooms, orchestras, Bollywood, cultural clubs and societies. Imperial community really imitates the city that it's in, which is incredibly vibrant and diverse. The central clubs and societies really allow for students to let off steam and to balance their life, and it's such an important part. And when speaking to students, it's not only how a university can support you academically, it's how it can support you in your skills and interests outside of the academics, because that's where a lot of the fun and networking is also going to develop.
Would you say it's true that, there's a sort of a theory about this, that those students who actually find that balance between dividing their time between academic study and sort of, sports, hobbies, societies, often end up being academically more successful than those who just have their nose buried in a laptop 100% of their time?
That's such a great thing to say, and you really notice it, because it is one of those skills and qualities that you do develop at university, and it's something that we look for, is that ability to kind of manage the workload, to be able to appreciate that learning doesn't just come from in a classroom, but it comes from the people that you're meeting, the network that you're building. And I think, that's such a great way to look at it. And I do say to students that whatever university you're joining, you're using that university like a springboard, and you can jump as kind of high as you're kind of willing to put the effort in. And I think such an important part of that life is utilizing the services, the the social side of the university, because that is part of the package. But I understand that for students transitioning into higher education, we are focused on the lectures and the workshops, but it's so important to think, okay, universities will offer all of this. What else can they bring me? And the social clubs and societies, the robotics, the things that you can take part in outside of that and really elevate what you're doing. It's so exciting, and I always encourage students to really, scratch the surface on the institutions and what else am I going to be able to get involved in.
Now, some universities have more than one campus, perhaps two campuses in the same city, or maybe in a different city. How does Imperial manage this? Do you have more than one campus in London?
So we have our main campus, which is the South Kensington campus, where the most undergraduate students will be based for the majority of their time. We have a newer campus, which is the White City campus, where a lot of the research, the invention labs, where students can go and prototype ideas, the woodwork, metalwork. It's a very futuristic campus to be a part of, slightly to a little bit more to the west of the city. And there's a shuttle bus between the two campuses. And this is where, networking, inventions, that whole kind of science futuristic feel really can be found at the White City campus. But the majority of time for undergraduates, their class time, their labs, their lectures, workshopping will be on the main campus in South Kensington.
Now, moving on to your students and lecturers, are your students mainly British or are they mainly from other countries?
Another great question. So one of the fantastic things about Imperial, so we are one of the most international universities in the world. So 62% of our students come from outside of the UK, very much again mirroring the amazing city of London that we're in, that diverse community, students from around the world, so over 140 countries that are represented at Imperial, and very similarly the staff as well. The research that's going on and the collaboration and partnerships of our staff. So it's a really important part of that community is that our staff, our students are a global network, and that adds to what students are able to experience as part of the community.
Does your university have some formal partnership with other universities around the world?
Absolutely. I think it's such an important part when you're thinking about being, taking part in a world leading institution. It's about those collaborations. So we have partnerships with universities in the US, like MIT, Carnegie Mellon. We have Canada, UBC. Our students are doing years abroad in these universities. But the partnerships we've just won this year that's been established is ISC Bangalore. We have students who are doing years abroad at ETH Zurich. All around the world, these partnerships are developed, and I think universities strengthen themselves by creating and forging these research partnerships and collaborations. Again, for students, undergraduate students, to be able to take part of this and see the benefits of this is things like years abroad, where you do these exchanges, you get the chance to experience what studying engineering or chemistry is like in a different country. And again, building that network and those partnerships through research are incredibly important. And we're so lucky to have partnerships and exchanges with so many world leading institutions, and it's fantastic for students to be able to take part of that.
I think it's worth pointing out to the listeners that top-ranked universities always have partnerships with other top-ranked universities in other countries, and clearly Imperial is a very top university. As I've mentioned the word rankings, I suppose I should ask you, is Imperial ranked in the rankings?
So yeah, we do incredibly well in the rankings, and I'm so proud again to see all the things that the rankings that are available. I think Imperial has been named the Guardian's University of the Year. We're in 5th place in the Guardian. We've been commended for the career prospects and for the highest levels of student satisfaction for teaching in England, which is fantastic. But I'm always cautious about throwing too many rankings and things, because I know students are incredibly overwhelmed by the numbers of rankings, and each institution can impress with a wide array, and I'm always encouraging students to really look in detail at the rankings that are important to them. What am I looking to gain from a ranking? Because there's so much more, and each institution could talk about being in the top 10 and top 5, and I know it's so overwhelming to think about, well, I want to be in the top 10, but I always encourage students really look at what's important. Is it research? Is it student satisfaction? Is it the teaching style? Because again, using a university for the facilities and really, if you just look at the rankings, you get such a kind of narrow picture of what a university can offer and where you can potentially excel. So I could talk forever about the fantastic rankings, but there's so much for students to be looking at, and I really encourage them to kind of do that research and really think about what's important for them with rankings.
I did talk forever on this topic, actually, Sarah. We made a podcast episode on rankings. So listeners, if you're interested to find out how rankings work and how you should approach using them, then please go and check our episode on that topic, because as you say, it's a huge topic and there's no end of different opinions on it. Can you give us a quick overview of the courses that your university offers?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we are a STEM-B focused university. So for undergraduates, we have over 110 different courses within the realm of STEM. So something that I really like to mention, even further, we take this specialism to the next level. When students come to study engineering with us, we have 10 distinct engineering departments. So everything from chemical, mechanical, through to things like materials, earth science and engineering, civil, through to things like computing and design engineering. With that specialism, our students, undergraduate students, will have a specific passion for an area of engineering. Now, some universities in the UK will have more of a general engineering program in the first year, and then you can specialise as you progress through the degree. With our engineering and with our natural sciences programs, with our medicine, it is very specialist. So students will have a clear passion, interest and focus in an area of engineering when they are looking to do their application. So, and this is echoed in our natural sciences program, whether that be chemistry with a year abroad, or with management, or with medicinal chemistry. We really attract the students who are interested in the realm of STEM and have that keen focus for a particular area. Our newest program that is starting in October next year is our Economics, Finance and Data Science program. So this is our newest course at Imperial, and it's highly awaited, offered through Imperial Business School, and is that fusion of the disciplines of economics, finance and data science, really implementing what you're kind of taking away from mathematics and kind of critically engaging with the world in those disciplines.
It sounds very interesting, because I know from conversations I have with my own students that many of them are looking for sort of a broader, more diverse program, which will give them skills in many different areas. And it seems like that course will do just what they're looking for. Are there any courses that international students cannot study? And I think that there is a cap or limit on the number of non-British students who are able to study medicine. Is that correct?
That is correct. So that is the only course where there is a limit to the amount of international students, and that is a government cap at 7.5%. So roughly for the Imperial cohort, that's about 24 international students a year. This is the only course where there is a limit. All of our other courses are open to international students on an equal basis as the UK students. So as I mentioned, 62% of our students actually come from outside of the UK, but medicine is the one where there is that cap.
When your students graduate, presumably they end up with a bachelor's degree, or do many of them tend to go on and do a master's degree or perhaps a PhD?
So for many of our courses, especially in engineering, that we have the integrated masters. So for the bachelor's of science, which is offered for all of our programs, or the Bachelor's of Engineering, which is the 3-year program. But many of our students do continue and do the integrated masters, so that 4-year program. So you graduate with a Master's of Engineering or a Master's of Science through that integration. It accelerates, that process. You can apply for this, from in UCAS through that the undergraduate route there, and many students do continue into areas of research into their PhDs from this progression after doing those integrated masters.
Now, I always encourage my students to look at programs that offer extras like an internship, a job placement, often referred to as a sandwich course in the UK. Do you offer these at Imperial?
So for some of our courses, we do have things like years abroad, years in industry, years with management. So this is something that's not for every course, but for some of our courses. One of the courses that I love to talk about is design engineering. This has a 6-month paid placement integrated into the course. And so from that, you are gaining that paid experience during your degree. And we do make sure that you're not just making teas and coffees in your placement. You are contributing to the work culture. You are engaging in one, if not two, projects whilst you're working there. And I believe one of our students just completed their internship, their placement at Formula One. So it's, companies like Google, Facebook, that there we have these connections, and absolutely it is a great way to get that industry experience as part of your degree. And many of our students then secure the graduate employment after completing that. It's building that network. There are also those kind of research opportunities, so undergraduate research opportunities internationally and in the UK for students who are kind of thinking, okay, would a PhD be something for me? Would a career in research be something? And it's a great way to figure out whether it is the right thing. Some students come in thinking, oh, I'd really love to get involved in research. And then after their placement think, okay, actually, I think an industrial placement would be more for me. So it's all about trying as much as you can throughout your university life and then securing that job at the end of it.
It's something I always point out to my students that these placement years or half years are real work, real jobs. You're not there to make tea and do photocopying, and I think that's the important point to make. But sort of, if we can talk a little bit about the teaching style, some students prefer a more formal sort of lecture-based style of teaching. Some would rather go more for a problem-based learning. How is it taught at Imperial?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's something that, again, we're always encouraging students to think about how they really like to learn. For us, it is more of that problem-based learning. Our students are taking what they learn and implementing that into the real world through workshops, through labs, moving away from the large lectures and large seminars and into more group work, project work, problem solving, problem sheets. And that kind of collaboration. The field of science and engineering, as you'll know, is not one that is often done alone. Engineers, scientists, they work together. It is part of that collaboration. And what Imperial is incredibly strong at is making students ready for the world of work, for the world of research, and that starts as early as possible. So it is more of that practical project, research-led form of teaching at the university.
And how are students assessed? Are they assessed as sort of ongoing assessment as they progress through their 3 or 4 years, or is it sort of an end of course exam type of assessment?
Yeah, so it will vary depending on the course, but there are varieties of ways that students are assessed, whether that be through examinations on various modules. Others will be more project and presentation based. I think a great thing is building up the skills. When you go to, work in large scale firms, you may need to present your ideas to in meetings and to your peers. So the way that you're assessed at Imperial is not only just through those formal written examinations, but also through working as a team, presenting your ideas, prototyping ideas, and that kind of assessment as well. It will vary depending on the degree that you're studying, but it won't be one set way throughout the degree, and it will be kind of continuous depending on the modules that you're taking.
Now, when talking about students applying to a very top university like Imperial College London, students often talk to me about how they can sort of make themselves as attractive as possible to the admissions team. And obviously you have a very clear idea about the sort of attributes that a successful applicant will have, because you want students to be successful while they're at Imperial. So you sort of know approximately what sort of profile of student you are looking to recruit. Perhaps you could share a few ideas around this thought.
Yeah, absolutely. So the prospective Imperial students who are looking to apply really do have a keen love, passion, and interest for what they're studying. Students that we see applying and being successful will have taken what they're learning in their IB, in their A levels, in the national curriculum, and they will be taking it a step further. Grades, great grades are important, and that's the kind of first step. But Imperial students do take things to the next level, and what UK universities are talking more and more about is super curricular activities. If you're applying to a competitive UK institution, our academics are wanting to see how you've demonstrated that interest in the subject that you're applying for, and taken it to the next level. Now, I get questions about, okay, do I need to have work experience? I've worked at 5 top companies. Will this give me a better chance of getting in? The answer is not necessarily. It's about the reflection of your experiences. Some students that we see just have a real passion for research, and they love reading journal articles around a specific area, and they want to kind of investigate things further, maybe doing a personal research project. Others have demonstrated their passion in STEM by giving back to the community. STEM is a traditionally male-dominated field. We've seen a lot of engineers and scientists giving back to younger students, encouraging younger female students to get involved in STEM, and demonstrating this passion for their subject by talking to younger peers and things like that. When we talk about super curricular activity, it doesn't need to cost money. I think students sometimes approach me and say, I can't afford to do a summer school program. Will this hinder my application? And the answer is no. You're not required to do a summer school, but we do want to see why you're passionate about that subject. Because if you're not passionate and demonstrating that interest, chances are you wouldn't enjoy life at Imperial. Because our students do have that keen love, and it comes from listening to podcasts about a particular area, a TED talk from an engineer who's inspired in the field of robotics, problem solving. Some students just really love the application of mathematics, the probability of their favorite football player scoring a goal, the the key thing for Imperial applicants is the focus of supercurricular. Whilst when you join the community, extracurricular, the sporting achievements, all of that fun is part of the community. When we're figuring out, who to make offers to, who to invite to interview, we want to see that academic focus and how you've demonstrated your interest. And that really can come from a variety of different ways.
Now, there are a couple of words you use there which really resonate with me. You use the word passion. Clearly, students have to have a passion for the course for which they are applying. But you also use the word they have to be reflective. And this is something I say to my students, that it's not just a question of having an ever longer list of activities which you've done, but you actually have to reflect on how you benefited, what you learned, what the challenges were, how you overcame them. And I think that all of those things are very relevant to make an application, well, to any British university, but especially to a top one like Imperial. And for the listeners, it's worth pointing out that when you apply to a British university, you'll be writing something called a personal statement. And this is really where you can talk about all of these things. What kind of academic support is offered to the students? And indeed, what kind of social emotional support do you offer at Imperial?
So that's a great question. And in terms of both the academic and personal well-being support, there is a huge range that is available to students on campus. So you'll hear UK universities talking about mothers and fathers, or aunts and uncles or cousins, and it's not we're not trying to replace your parents or your guardians permanently, but we want to make sure that students have that transition, whether that be the academic, the personal tutors, the academic you can go to if you are struggling with a research project or struggling with an idea, someone that you will meet with termly to talk about those ideas, any points you need kind of feedback or reflection over. But you also have the more senior students, the mothers and fathers, the aunts and uncles, to give you the tips and tricks, to talk to you on a peer-to-peer level about their experiences. The transition from school, high school into university is an adjustment for anyone, let alone if you're moving countries and things like that. So it's really important that the support on campus is there for you academically with the personal tutors, the department tutors, but also on the health and well-being, the disability advisory team, health and mental health, the counselling services, the drop-in sessions. They're all available on campus if you are struggling. My key advice to any student going to any university is please don't suffer in silence.
Yeah.
The support and there's so much focus on wellness and making sure that students are able to cope and to balance, and it is a transition for all students. I think one of the things that I speak to current students a lot to try and understand what it's like to be an Imperial student. And, one of the things that students adjust to is that imposter syndrome. You've been you've been a top student your whole life at school and you've really excelled. And then you come to a university where everybody's the top student. Everybody's, got these grades and are passionate, and they kind of think, how have I got here? This is, do I belong here? And the thing is, everybody is feeling it. And the support is there, for, mental health, wellness, meditation. The support is there on campus. It's reaching out and making sure that you get that support, because you're not alone. It is something that students will be discussing and creating socials about in order to create that community. But it's just making sure that wherever you go, that you reach out for that support.
I think that's a very good point you make, that students shouldn't feel that they're in this on their own. They shouldn't isolate themselves. They should really reach out for support. And I think it's a point worth making that British universities do an excellent job in this respect, because they recognise that these are young people, usually only 18 years of age, probably the first time away from home, and they do need that support. So if you're a parent listening to this, and I'm sure there are many parents out there, rest assured, your son or daughter will have that level of support. I know this because I'm a parent and I've sent both my sons away to British universities.
Yeah.
Health services. Are there health services available on campus?
Yep, so all Imperial students, once they join, it's a very smooth process in terms of the health centres. So there'll be health centres near the accommodation that you're based in, but we also have a health centre and dentist on campus for students to access. For students who are looking to keep healthy, there's a gym on campus as well. But yeah, all of those facilities available. And when you join, there's a programme, the support. So for international students and home students to help kind of guide you through this process, because it can be quite overwhelming to think of all these things, but we are well prepared to kind of help support you through getting those you registered.
Do foreign students have to take out extra health insurance in order to be covered in the UK?
So that will be part of the visa process. So that is something that students will go through as part of issuing the visa.
Okay, we talked earlier on about sports and all the different clubs and societies and activities you have, but students also like to party. I mean, are there opportunities for them to, let their hair down and party a little bit at Imperial?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many, part of the initial welcome week, there are things like boat parties, club nights. But there's also, I mean, we are in London. There's collaborations with other, London universities. It's utilising that network. We don't just, sit isolated, in Kensington. We collaborate with, the clubs and societies at UCL and LSE and SOAS. It is that network which is amazing. So you have access to students from other students and clubs and societies. I know the Indian clubs and societies, they're always arranging. There's a huge kind of celebration of East meets West, which was one of the largest celebrations on campus of Bollywood dancing and music. And there's, the nightlife is extremely varied, no matter what you're kind of interested in, what music or how, we have a kind of movie night on campus as well. So new movies are shown in the kind of cinema room on campus. So for student, I know that the computing clubs and societies do pizza nights and hackathons. Anything with free food and free pizza is a way to get students involved. But there's a range of different ways which students have kind of that entertainment, and it is so varied, whether that be the kind of games nights that students will put on, or movie nights or club nights. It's so varied.
We're going to come on and talk about accommodation and food because, of course, that's an extremely important topic for all students. But before we get to that, can you tell us about how you help students in those first few days, the first week, Freshers Week, settle in? Do you have a meet and greet at the airport, for example? How do you support students getting their feet on the ground and getting used to actually being at Imperial?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with so many students who are coming from, outside of the country, but also from various parts of the UK, many students have never been to London before. So Welcome Week is really, before term starts, is that opportunity for students to find their feet. And it will be through, the departments will organise their welcome events. So you'll get to meet people on the course in a kind of a meet and greet event. Student accommodation will involve mixers, so that you get the chance to kind of meet people throughout that week before classes properly start. You have things like the freshers fairs, the welcome fairs, drop-in sessions where you can get that support from student services. If you do have any issues at this point, drop in, finding, part-time jobs. It's all kind of step by step for students, because if you all of a sudden welcome and here's everything, it could be quite overwhelming. But the way that it starts at the beginning of term is designed to help students kind of find their feet gradually and meeting a wider and wider network as the week progresses before term start.
Okay, Sarah. Most British universities provide accommodation for the students. Do you guarantee accommodation for your international students?
So for first year students, all first years are guaranteed accommodation, so Imperial accommodation in their first year as long as they make us their firm choice in UCAS. So that is guaranteed for the first year. And we find that in that first year, over 90% of undergraduate students, international and home students, will be in Imperial accommodation. It is that great opportunity to experience university life to its fullest, the social events, the opportunity to meet people at a range of different courses. And then in your second, third, and potentially fourth year, if you're doing the integrated masters, we find that students usually move into private accommodation. And we have what is called Imperial Home Solutions, who help with finding trusted landlords, helping with contracts, making sure that you feel secure in the private accommodation that you are going to be finding from that second year. Now, students can apply. If they wanted to stay in halls, they can apply. Some students become hall wardens, so more senior students who help support the first years. But more often than not, most students will find those friends on their course in the accommodation and move into private accommodation as supported by Imperial in their subsequent years.
It's a good point you make about finding friends, because I think that a lot of students make friends with those who just live in the room next door or down the hallway, or perhaps those who join the same club or society or taken the same course. I'm actually still friends with someone I met that very first week, and I won't even tell you how many years ago that was. But it is a great way to make friends. Another question we get asked quite often in school is the gender separated accommodation?
So for us, we don't. So in the Imperial accommodation, we don't have gender separated accommodation. If you were looking for a twin room, that would be separated by gender. But for us, we don't have the gender separated accommodation itself. But if students were looking at this, we could recommend private providers that would be able to support this in London.
Okay, next question is a rather sort of a wacky question, if you like, but are pets allowed in student accommodation?
Um, that's a great question. So no, accommodation for kind of health and safety reasons, we're not able to accept or allow pets in the student accommodation.
Interestingly enough, I was visiting one of your partner universities, UBC in Vancouver, a few years ago, and they have a sort of a rent-a-pet scheme. And we had a presentation by the gentleman who organized this scheme. And as soon as I came back to the school where I work and mentioned that UBC had pets, there was a huge uptick in interest. People wanted to know what type of animals they could cuddle at the weekends. Anyway, maybe Imperial could consider getting a cat or a dog or something. But I suppose we should get back to a more serious matter. And what is more serious than where students are going to eat? I mean, how is the campus provided for cafeterias? Is there provision for vegans, vegetarians, all those sort of things?
Sure. So the first thing to mention, and it is a unique thing for Imperial compared to some other universities, so all of our accommodation is self-catered. I mentioned this because before you arrive, I recommend learning to cook at least one meal, because this is going to help with budgeting. This is going to help with skills overall, and making sure we find that some students will do like rotate different meal nights and they'll take turns to cook for each other. So coming to Imperial, you're building up those skill sets even further, and I do recommend learning to cook at least one meal. In terms of campus facilities, there's a range of different um, meals, vegan, vegetarian. Again, one of the perks of being in London are the amount of cultures that are and restaurants that are around. With the campus cafeterias and facilities, the food is discounted. Every Tuesday we have a farmers market. on campus, local produce being sold, local bakers and food stalls. So it's a real hub on campus with local produce there, vegan, vegetarian, meat, halal options, all available on campus. To cater to any dietary requirements. So yeah, it's a great place. It's just one of those things with budgeting, making sure that you're kind of familiar with kitchen utensils and how to make a meal in to keep those costs down.
It's a good point. I mean, takeout pizza's nice occasionally, but but not 7 days a week, every week. It's probably not very good for your long-term health prospects either. Last week, actually, only last week, one of my Indian students asked me whether he could get Indian food in London. I sort of stifled a laugh. I said almost every village in the UK has an Indian takeout restaurant. London has, I don't know, probably tens of thousands at least. So if you are coming from abroad to study in the UK, especially if you go to London, like Sarah's just said, you won't have any trouble at all getting particularly your preferred food. Now, Sarah, tuition fees, of course, the cost of higher education is a matter of keen interest to families. Can you explain how tuition fees work at Imperial or at British universities generally?
Absolutely. So for home students, there's a set fee each year for all courses. But for international students, it does differ depending on the course that you are applying to. Now, at Imperial, this can vary between 35 to £45,000 a year, and it's really important that when students are doing that research, is that they do look at the individual courses and the fees, the tuition fee, the annual fee that is required for that course, and that is a separate fee to the kind of accommodation and living costs that would be needed as well.
I think it's worth pointing out that since Brexit happened, there are now two categories of students at British universities as far as fees are concerned. That's UK and Irish Republic citizens, known as home students, and everybody else who is an international student. You mentioned other costs like housing costs. Can you tell us approximately how much your student accommodation costs?
So it does vary, and in terms of like the overall living costs, so accommodation will is discounted for students, so it can be from as low as £170 a week, and it does increase depending on the facilities, whether you want an ensuite, how close you want to be to campus. Overall, in terms of budgeting life in London, if you think about accommodation, food, the social costs, we predict that students should budget between £1,300 to £1,500 per month. So that is to factor in the social costs, the accommodation, and life outside of the university.
I mean, are there opportunities for students to actually work when they're in the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of the student visa, international students are able to work up to 20 hours per week during term time. Now, they're allowed to work up to that time, but in terms of balancing work, life, the social commitments, we wouldn't recommend working more than 15 hours. But we do encourage students to get part-time jobs. This can be on campus in the cafes or bars on campus, or it could be with my team as a student ambassador, working at events, talking about your life as an Imperial student. And many of our students do work during the holiday times and balancing that experience. But you don't want to push yourself too much, especially in your first year when you're finding your feet, you're meeting new people. It's important to look at your budget realistically and come prepared, just so you don't have that pressure when you're starting to immediately find a job and balance work life and your academics.
I think it's a very good point because if you spend too many hours working in your job, then perhaps your academics might suffer. Now, some students will also be familiar with the system in the United States where there's a lot of financial aid available. Could you tell us what financial aid is available at Imperial?
Yes, and again, it's separated into the kind of the home students and international support. So if you are a home student, there are bursaries available as long as the overall income. Household income is under 60,000. This is between £2,000 to £5,000 a year. For international students, it is a little different. And in terms of scholarships, it is for undergraduate students quite limited to the partial scholarships, and they are usually merit based. It will be depending on the courses that you're applying to or the curriculum that you're studying. We have a partial scholarship for available for students taking the IB, a partial scholarship. My biggest tip for students who are investigating this is to really look as early as possible. You'll find that universities will have internal scholarships, but universities also, like Imperial, will also be on lists for government, British Council scholarships. So really doing your research about what is available if you were looking to study a subject, factoring in your country of domicile, where you're from. It is about researching what is available.
Okay, Sarah. Now, international students will need to get a visa, a student visa to study in the UK. Can you talk about the process that they have to go through to get this visa?
Yeah, so we get a lot of questions about this, especially quite early on in the application process. But the processing of the visa actually doesn't start until you hold an unconditional offer from a university. So once you have received and you've met all the conditions, you've achieved the grades to secure that unconditional offer, that is when the visa process starts. Now, we have a fantastic team at Imperial, the international student support team, who, once you've met all those conditions, will start the process to issue a CAS number, which is then the number that you will be required to put on the visa information to start that process. But we do have a dedicated team to help support you through this process.
I think it's worth pointing out that the British universities always have people who will be there to help and advise you with the whole visa process. Another question I get asked is, can I stay on in the UK and work after I've graduated? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and it's a really exciting development, especially for international students. So if you're studying an undergraduate degree through the graduate worker route, you can now live and work in the UK without requiring that sponsorship for up to 2 years. It's 3 years if you continue on and do your PhD. So that's a really exciting development, not needing that sponsorship. It does give students that flexibility to work for a startup, work for a large multinational company, or as more and more Imperial students are doing, is actually carving their own path and starting their own company. So it just gives students that time, those 2 years, to take advantage of the career services that are offered through the university and live and work in the country that they've been studying in.
Now, students applying to Imperial will presumably be applying to other British universities. And just as a note here, you're allowed to apply to 5 different courses in the UK through a central system called UCAS. So we've made a podcast episode on that. But when students are researching which universities to apply to, and they're considering Imperial, what would you say are the strengths of Imperial?
Oh, the strengths. I mean, for students who are really looking to implement their ideas into the real world, we have those facilities. We have the researchers, the academics to support you in turning your vision into a reality. I think what we're seeing more and more is that innovation and entrepreneurship across the board is really propelling students into a new realm. And our enterprise lab, which I think is one of the most fantastic facilities for students to get involved in terms of mentorship, um, shadowing, development of ideas, patenting, contractual advice, is if you have an idea, if you have a passion for an area of STEM or business, Imperial can really propel that in ways that you can't imagine. And I think it's such an exciting place to be if you do have those kind of passions and focus. It just is such an incredible place to be for those students.
Now, parents are always interested to know where students go on and work after they've graduated, and also what the graduate employability rates are. Perhaps you could talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in rankings, we've been highly commended for our career prospects and where students are ending up. It's fantastic. And as I mentioned, many of our students go into top companies, whether that be consulting firms like Goldman Sachs, or whether it be Formula One, Dyson, British Airways, whether they're going to work in various space stations. But again, that community is building startup companies. I was just reading about an alum who's from mechanical engineering, started up a Koala, the prosthetics company, and the level of innovation that our students are creating those companies for themselves, and putting products onto the market is amazing. But yes, the graduate prospects in terms of where Imperial students and how they do, we are world leading and one of the best for this in the country.
It sounds like Imperial is really setting students up for future success. Sarah, I'm convinced I want to come to Imperial, but how do I maximize my chances of being accepted?
I think, as with making any choices, especially with higher education, is doing that research. Okay, if Imperial sounds like a community that you could thrive in, do that research into that course. Look at what we offer, the modules that we offer, and really start exploring and, as we mentioned earlier, reflecting on your passion and interest within that realm. Our academics have spent their lives focusing in these areas of research, and they really want to know, why are you interested in that as well? So once you figure out the course that interests you, once you figure out the university that interests you, if it is an institution like Imperial, make sure that you reflect on how you got to this point and your interest going up into higher education, and how you've demonstrated that, because our academics are really going to want to see that passion and how you've demonstrated that in your activities outside of your academics.
Can you just briefly describe the actual application process?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, with most UK universities, it is we accept our applications through UCAS. So that centralized system where you have up to 5 course choices, and you'll be implementing your personal information, and also very key is putting it together that personal statement. So that personal statement, which um, will be a reflection of why you're looking to study that subject, and that academic focus. We recommend 75 to 90% of your personal statement should be around why you're interested in studying that subject and what you've done to demonstrate that passion. And then 10 to 25% should be around the extracurricular activities and the skills that you've you've gained from that. Again, that reflection, even from those extracurricular activities. What you want to move away from is that kind of shopping list of achievements. I've won this competition, I've taken part in this award, I've done this. That's great, but really reflect on the most important achievements and put that into the personal statement. So once our admissions have seen from the UCAS application that you've met the grade requirements, met or exceeded the grade requirements in terms of the predicted grades, we're then going to be looking at your personal statement. Hopefully your teachers or counsellor have written a strong reference that demonstrate you in the classroom and how you excel in areas of subjects that you're applying to do at university. And from this, some departments will be able to make an offer, but many of the departments, many of the courses at Imperial do require either an internal admissions test or an interview as well. And this is just a chance for academics to get to know you more and for you to know the department as well. They're going to be wanting to ask you questions about why you want to study the course, perhaps some problem solving questions, really just wanting to know how you work through problems. They may not expect you or need you to get the right or perfect answer, but they do want to know how you think, how you approach problems. If you're given new information, how do you use that new information? And all through this process, it is just about finding that right fit. And hopefully after the interview, you think, this is really exciting and I can't wait to kind of engage in this level of problem solving and research. Or you might think, okay, actually a better institute, an institution might be a better fit for me. All throughout this process, it is about, for both yourselves as a student and the institution, finding that perfect relationship and finding a place where you're going to thrive. And we look at the personal statement and then the interviews and admissions tests as a way of trying to figure that out.
Now, in some parts of the world, it's quite normal or accepted that a student will apply through an agent rather than just through the college counsellor at their school. If a student goes down this route, does it improve their prospects of being accepted?
No. So so at Imperial, we don't work with any agents. We are assessing that application that comes through UCAS on an equal level. Through your personal statement, through your teacher's reference, we want to see why you are the best applicant. We don't give any preference to students who have come through agents, nor do we take those applications at any disadvantage. Any application that we receive by the deadline is looked at through equal consideration and given that kind of opportunity.
Now, Sarah, we've run through a lot of very, very interesting information about Imperial, and I'm sure the listeners now have a very positive view of your university. In case there was something that was not addressed here in the podcast episode, who should they contact at Imperial if they have any questions?
So both our international and UK team are happy to answer any questions. So on the website, we have the specific people to contact. So it would be me for South Asia and the Middle East. And all of our contact information is available on the Contact Us pages for the UK and international team. I promise we're a friendly bunch. If you do have any questions, we really welcome anything to be sent directly to us.
Thank you. Sort of finally, is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't covered so far in this episode?
I think my final thing is just enjoy the process as much as possible. I know it can be an incredibly overwhelming process for students. There are so many fantastic choices of institutions, not only in the UK, but also internationally. But trust me, it's worth it when you find that institution, when you find that course after the research. it's going to be worth it because you will find that perfect fit for you. But enjoy the process, enjoy thinking about what you're passionate about, and really follow what you enjoy. I think, again, there's so much pressure for students to be achieving the best grades and to be going on to the best university with the best ranking, but enjoy what you're studying, because that's what's going to take you and make you successful. And universities like Imperial are going to welcome that love and welcome that passion. And if it's not Imperial, it'll be another fantastic institution, but really follow that passion and that love, because academics, researchers, and your peers will also recognize that. So that would be my advice, is to enjoy the process and enjoy thinking about that next step.
I always tell my students that they should try and enjoy their university years as much as possible. And I think that really means sort of finding the right fit for the individual person. Now, Imperial, of course, is a very competitive university, and students will need to have a plan B. We've already mentioned in the centralized British system called UCAS, you can apply to 5 courses or 5 universities. Now, is there any other institution that you would recommend a student to have as their plan B, just in case they can't get into Imperial, either a British university or in some other country?
That's a tough question, because there are so many fantastic institutions, and it really does depend on what the student is looking to specialize in, because a strength at one university might not have as strong a mechanical engineering. I really would just recommend that research, and that one listing that one institution is so difficult, because there are just so many, and we collaborate with so many in London and internationally. What I would say is, institutions like Imperial, which are specialist, are very different to our counterparts in the States, which give you that flexibility to do majors and minors in different disciplines. And whilst you're going through the process of figuring out which country or curriculum that you're going to best thrive in, is thinking about the specialism that is obtained through a university like Imperial, and thinking, okay, but would I prefer, the flexibility of doing double majors or arts and humanities along with the sciences? So it is working out which style of university is going to be the best fit for them.
Sarah, you've given us a lot of food for thought today, and a very positive view of Imperial. And for that, we're very grateful. And I would just say to the listeners, when you're looking around, thinking about applying to universities, as Sarah says, do your research carefully, do your thinking, and figure out, what's the best possible fit for you. So finally, then, that was Sara Roberts, Senior International Recruitment Officer for Imperial College London. Thank you so much, Sarah, and goodbye.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and share the Find Your Best Future podcast.